Hi, welcome to another edition of ELPCO Presents. Today we're talking about the 800 East Neighborhood Byway, a new transportation concept coming to ELPCO and actually several community councils across the city, hopefully very soon. Some of you might remember the Stay Safe and Stay Active streets, where last year during the pandemic in 2020, we had some streets that were made much more accessible to bikes and walkers and everybody else out there. Well, this is sort of an extension of that concept, and we're here with Salt Lake City Transportation officials, as well as an outside consultant, Tim Sullivan, to learn about what this 800 East Neighborhood Byway is going to be about. So Jena Carver from Salt Lake City Transportation, can you tell us a bit about what residents can expect? And it's going to be on 800 East, but you don't have to live on 800 East to use it. Is that right?
That's correct. It's 800 East. I'll just clarify the limits for you. It's from 800 South to the city limits, which are just south of 2700 South. That's what we're looking at. The Stay Safe, Stay Active street that we did last year was a little bit shorter than that, but we're looking at the entire length. This entire length of the street is planned as a neighborhood byway on the bike ped master plan. We were approached by UDOT, or we're working with UDOT on the Stay Safe, Stay Active streets, and they're actually paying for the study that's being done right now. That is what you've seen. As they see the street as a good alternative for bicycles and pedestrians, a good alternative to 700 East, and a good opportunity to improve active transportation, which they're pushing for more and more, and something we really like to see. This study will be concluded hopefully by the end of the summer, first of fall, and then we'll hopefully move on to construction if we can get funding. There's currently no money for construction funding, but we are applying for funds from the city and looking for other sources right now.
Gotcha. Can you describe what a neighborhood byway would look like? Like 800 East, we know, is a pretty calm street that runs through sort of the east side of Salt Lake City, crosses a lot of big streets, but also goes next to a lot of nice amenities like 9th and 9th, and some of the dog parks and other parks around here. What would a neighborhood byway look like? And actually, do residents have a bit of a choice about what it looks like?
Right, residents do have a choice in what it looks like. We do not have a set standard for what a neighborhood byway looks like. If you look at 600 East, that's one of our earliest neighborhood byway implementations. It's not complete, but we tried to get cars to go a little bit slower. We've got some improved crossings. We have what we call the toucan signals at Liberty Park and on 2100 South on 6th East. All of those things discourage vehicles from traveling. We have a lower 20-mile-per-hour speed limit, and it makes it a little bit easier for bikes to use so that they have someplace a little bit more low stress. But exactly what kind of treatments we can put on a neighborhood byway, that's what we're looking at with this project. We're hoping not only to have this be a great project, but to take some of these concepts and use them on other streets throughout the city.
So right now there's a survey that Salt Lake City residents can fill out. We'll put the link up right now. So you can go to that survey, you can fill it out by the end of June, and you can let folks at Salt Lake City Transportation know what you want. But what are some of the options that you have out there? I presume that cars are not going to be prohibited from 800 East, but I like how you use the word discouraged. Not like people are going to be out there being like, no, you can't drive down here, but you're going to create treatments. You're going to change the way the streets look. Is that right? To make it so that cars won't want to be zooming through there for 10 blocks. Is that correct?
That's correct. Our intention is mainly to eliminate those cut through vehicles. Vehicles are using the street to get from one place to another and don't have a destination right on the corridor. So residents, any visitors, delivery trucks, of course, the mail, garbage pickup will be able to use it. Also, it will be required to be kept open for fire access. So anything we put in will be fire accessible, which will also allow any delivery trucks or garbage trucks to traverse. And we want the people driving on the road to be going at a courteous speed. So you can have a mixing of the bicycles, even younger children bicycling, and pedestrians, and everyone's going at respectful speed and going to a destination on that corridor rather than just cutting through.
And we'll throw up some examples of what the concepts you've designed right now here in the video so people can get a sense of what can be done. We're familiar with that in ELPCO, specifically with the roundabout that was put in at 11th East and 900 South. SLC Transportation did a couple of different, what they called pop-ups, sort of examples to let people know how that intersection could change. Do you envision doing something similar with this project, different pop-ups, or is there going to be a menu of options that residents will be able to choose from as they're seeing right now in these images?
We have talked about doing pop-ups. We don't have one planned currently. We've talked about different ideas for those. There are pros and cons to doing those pop-ups. We're talking about possibly doing something in the fall. If not a pop-up, at least an on-site meeting where we'll be out there able to talk to people about the options and show them what it will look like, if not as a pop-up, then with some posters.
Gotcha. Can we talk a little about what the overall concept of what a neighborhood byway is? Why is this an important goal for our city to have? I mean, you think of streets as being the place to get from point A to point B as fast as possible, right? At least some people do. But neighborhood byways have a different approach. And Tim or Lara, could one of you maybe explain a little bit more about the concepts behind these different streets?
Sure, I'll jump in and say that, you know, it's an important goal for Salt Lake City, in general, Salt Lake City Transportation, to provide more options for folks to get around the city. You know, for a really, really long time, cars have been the main mode of transportation, and we have sort of built our entire transportation network around cars. And we are trying to do a little bit of catch up in terms of design and planning in order to make our streets friendlier for other modes of transportation. So the corridor can still be a place for people to get from point A to point B, just maybe they won't be in their cars. Maybe, you know, a big goal of the neighborhood byway program in general is to provide a connected network of streets across the city that are these low stress, high comfort for bikes and pedestrians to travel around.
You know, one of the other things we heard from people, so, you know, a lot of the ideas that you see in these concepts are actually from the neighbors themselves along 800 East. We put out a survey over the winter, I believe it was December, January, asking just kind of about the response to stay safe, stay active, open streets, and people's, you know, hopes and ideas for the 800 East Byway. And so people really gave us a ton of ideas. They also told us what they liked about the Stay Safe, Stay Active Open Street last summer on 800 East, which was one of the most well-used ones, and one of the reasons that 800 East was selected for this, you know, kind of hybrid pilot of Stay Safe, Stay Active in a neighborhood byway. And we asked, one of the questions we asked was a really simple question, but elicited a lot of really great response, was tell us a story about the open street. And we went through a read out. We got over I believe 300 responses to that survey, and 82% of those stories were really positive. I mean, we're like the lesson was the open street was great. And one of the themes that we thought was really interesting is that it wasn't just that, you know, you could move safely along the corridor, on foot, on bike, rolling, skating, whatever. Although that was a huge piece of it, but it was also like it allowed me to meet my neighbors. It gave the neighborhood more public space. You know, there was a ballet, I think. There's a street hockey. You know, there are all these different things that happened, and so that really kind of led us to kind of think about, okay, well, neighborhood byway isn't just about, you know, people moving safer, although it certainly is, but it's also about public streets as public space, and how can we emphasize that as well. So that, I think that idea really led to, you know, some of these concepts, and how do we create space for people to be out, you know, and meet their neighbors, like have these social interactions, use the street space as public space.
Great, thanks for those excellent descriptions and sort of connecting what we experienced last year to what we hope for the future. Of course, now we can meet people a little bit easier with our vaccines helping us out, so we can take advantage of those public spaces. I'm wondering if you could describe in detail some of the specific elements that could be added. I mean, is it going to be like more trees, more greenery, you know, planter boxes, street lights? sort of bulb outs, curbs. Is this the idea of kind of taking the sidewalk and taking those public spaces and kind of squeezing them into the street? Is that sort of what we're looking at in terms of?
So I think that one way to look at it is that a lot of what drove the concepts that we created were a number of different trade-offs. So street space is limited, and you have to really decide between A or B, sometimes in what you want to emphasize. And so some of the trade-offs were, do we want more things scattered along the corridor for the same budget as maybe a few things at key locations, such as like where the neighborhood byways cross, or at key, do we want to focus more on getting people across the major intersections, key safety points, than spaces in the middle of the neighborhood? Do we want to take a traditional approach to signage and have, do everything through signs, or do we want to create more cues of this is the space for people and kind of lay off the signs a little bit? Do we want this to be city-driven, city-maintained, neighbor-driven, resident-driven, resident-maintained? So those are some of the trade-offs that we were exploring a little bit and we developed these three concepts. The first one really takes the stay safe, stay active idea and addresses probably the biggest issue with it was that the signs were blowing over and getting knocked over by cars. And so what we're proposing is these concrete collar planter barriers that are pretty immovable unless you have a lot of heavy equipment. But those can be used for planters, they can be used for signage, they can be used as barriers. So a series of those, just building on the stay safe, stay active, as well as the traditional sort of byway approach that Salt Lake has started to develop, creating just better crossings to major streets. The second one is more resident driven. So it creates sort of more inexpensive improvements, such as, paint, temporary delineators, movable planters, that could be deployed kind of in different places along the corridor more flexibly. The third approach is we call it more things in fewer locations. So fewer things that are kind of more nicer improvements. So like say the traffic circles or the curb extension, bulb outs, or even a raised intersection that could be a neighborhood plaza. Those are more expensive investments, but things that I think could be really, really high impact, in the right place.
That's fantastic. And all that is available on the website that we'll put up right now. And of course, people can respond by completing the survey and letting you guys know what they want for their neighborhood byway. I think this is really exciting that it's coming to ELPCO. Well, if there's any way that we can get you the funding or help out with that, please reach out. Not that we have the funding, but we can write letters. We're good at that. And I guess I just had one last question that came in from a resident, and that was the boundaries right now are about 800 south. You mentioned, Jena, about 2,700 south. Is there any possibility of extending it further north to 400 south, maybe connecting it to the tracks line? Are there any ways that that this could even expand once we get it started?
Yes, there is a possibility, depending on what is decided. The character of the street does change a little bit at 800 south with a median down the center. So depending on what elements are decided on, we can continue that to the north, and depending on what kind of funding we get. But we definitely have that entire length on the bike safe, edit this out. We have that entire length on the bike ped master plan. So it is planned to be a neighborhood byway. Just what elements those will be will depend on what can be done there and what kind of funding we have.
Got it. Okay, thanks for answering that. That was a question from a resident just outside of the boundaries, wondering whether or not it would come sooner. Well, thank you, Lara and Jena from Salt Lake City Transportation and Tim from Township and Range for working on this project. We're excited to let our residents know about it, and we look forward to connecting with you again as it takes shape and moves from an online survey to actually things on the ground. So thank you.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate it.